we rolling?
We
All
are.
right, well, we'll call the meeting to order. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Move approval.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next, we will approve the disbursements. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or any highlights, Steve, that you want us to make note of?
No, I would just say that perhaps the next meeting, sometime, I'm hoping that we would have the year end all, like, they take a little bit of time to wrap up year end, and then as soon as I have it, we'll talk about it.
Okay,
I just
so
want you to
maybe
know.
we'll carve out some extra time in next meeting. for that
Absolutely,
conversation.
and this is obviously then the first, being July, the first month of the first the new fiscal year.
All right, any questions otherwise?
I got a question.
Yep.
At the corner of Marquette and River Drive, the southwest corner, right, tree services parked all their trucks. Do they lease that?
No, it's a short term. I know they've been there for a few weeks, but they, Public Works asked if they could make use of that because they're working with forestry on projects throughout the city, and they needed a place for the robot, the big trucks, and then they obviously, the employees park there and then use the trucks and then come back, and so I didn't think that, we never talked about the length of time, but I understand it to be a several week thing, but not several month thing, so I didn't pursue a lease per se.
Probably impacts the cost of the city if they don't.
I'm not sure the arrangement, I'm more of a, I got a call from Nicole saying, could we, sure.
I'll be quiet.
Because then I can, maybe we could call that favor in
Yeah,
later
yeah.
time, is how I look at it. That's an easy
Yeah.
one. I need the street sweeper sometimes at the freight house.
Chips at the bank.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? All right. Next, leases, starting with Hot Leadership LLC at Union Station.
Yeah, so this is the 311 square feet, two office area within the suite that is shared with Mississippi Valley Blues Society on the second floor of Union Station, where Rita Rawson had been. We were able to work with, his name is Steve Ott, and it's Ott Leadership LLC. It's he along with a colleague that will occupy both of those available offices. As you see, it's a year lease, bumped it up a bit from where it was, which already was above the market rate. But I did so because he would like it to be painted and some carpeting laid. It's pretty awful. And these are the opportunities to do that. So I also want to point your attention to the highlighted part under term, item C. And you all asked me to research some language that assists in a quote-unquote sort of penalty piece for leaving the term early. And so I worked with legal, Brian Hires specifically on this, and learned that, first of all, you're talking about litigation in most cases when push comes to shove of some of these things. And by Iowa law, I learned that we could do a deposit of no more than 2 months on the front end, and beyond that, you're basically litigating. So like even if we said in here, we want a year, or whatever, we were going to penalize you for a substantial allotment of more rent. He's like, it's basically going to end up in the courts. Well, we have found, as you know, that is a laborious, expensive enterprise, and oftentimes we just don't pursue it. Right or wrong, we just don't. So my recommendation, working with him and to you, is to include this language so that it's at least something. And in fact, it'd be up to you all as well, but I would recommend as leases come up for renewal, this is a new one, but I'd say we'd use this language when we go to renew others. So that would be a change for some, that we'd ask for them to come up with a couple months additional rent. In this case, it's not a huge amount, we're, 700, I mean, they're basically gonna be asked to come up with 3 months rent here. And so, on a renewal, we would be, we'd give them enough knowledge, and maybe even work out some sort of, give them a couple months since it's new, but the point has to remain the same, and that is, some of our monthly rent is, $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 a month. That's not a small chunk of change. We have to keep that in mind, but that's what we would give back once the term is, fulfilled. But if it's not, then this is what we hang our hat on, even though it's not perfect. And we also can then pursue, it doesn't disallow us to pursue, if we ever sought to, litigation, but this at least covers some, or is intended to, it's something.
I think this is a reasonable thing for us to do, and I think it's important to establish a little bit of protection for the commission with these situations. It seems not unusual for us to have a scenario.
They have deposit as clay standard.
Right.
Yeah, and this is only a one-year lease, so 2 months is kind of like,
Yeah, so
wouldn't expect anything more.
you're right, like here.
But
it's
do
kind
the
of
other
big.
ones that aren't 1 year, they're multi-year, we have a clause in there about giving us like so many months' notice if they're leaving early?
Usually it says for renewal,
Yeah,
it
well,
speaks
for
to renewal
renewal,
more
but
than
not to-
anything. Right.
In the sublease part, it does.
And that might be an angle where we add language additionally to it that says basically some notice or whatever. It really, what it does, as you have all pointed out, it puts a lot of pressure on to fill it. I mean, we luck into some sometimes, other times it can be years, and that's rent that has been budgeted for, so it's missed,
Yeah, I
so
think
like
it's
a little
reasonable to
time.
have at least 3 months' notice if they're
Yeah.
not going to renew.
Right.
So that you have time, okay, if we're gonna need
Right.
a list, let's do that. If we need to assess to see if any improvements are gonna have to,
That's
be
true.
made, that's really helpful.
Right.
So,
It just is a good solution.
yeah, I think so too. Okay, do you need a motion to approve this?
Yeah, and so because he would like
To move it.
to move ahead on September 1st, and I want to paint it and that sort of thing, yes.
Okay,
So moved.
second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Projects, we have a draft of the CIP projects.
So rather than trying to be proactive a little bit, but rather than kind of giving it to you after the fact or after I've developed it or, whatever, what I've done here is take this last year's submitted projects and then refine it. I want to go through each of them, but what I would hope as a result of this discussion is that it's not due next week. It's not due for a few months. So we can think about this and discuss it tonight and continue to talk about it for at least another meeting or two, and then it would be submitted. That way, we have some extra time to explore some ideas that sometimes we don't.
When do we actually need to submit our?
I haven't heard the actual date, but it's typically by the end of September, like early October typically, so we really have a couple months.
It might be nice before our next meeting if we could, maybe, if people could just sort of rank, rank them, what are people's priorities and get some sense, maybe a little bit independently without necessarily
Yep.
peer pressure from whoever else,
Yeah,
might
no,
have strong
absolutely.
feelings about something. But then, just for us to kind of get a sense and send that into you and then kind of, have a chance to say, these were the
Yep.
things that seem to have kind of broad
And even some
interest for
additional
commissioners.
ideas too.
And,
if there's-
if there's some additional things, but to give us a starting place maybe,
Yep.
are there any of these that
Let me,
we should be?
yeah, let me just sort of, I think the
Sure.
best way is to kind of go through it. What I tried to do was, it is a CIP budget for the way the city does it is, it'd be fiscal year 2024 through 2029. And many of these dates, they were projects that are in there undated, like not budgeted. Because what really happens is you insert them, you have to place dates to them, and then it
They
gets
take a look.
decided about the order of them, and they really just focus in on the fiscal year, in this case, 2024. Like, and they might look at 2025 a little bit, because you don't want it to be twice what is the anticipated bonded amount, you know, kind of thing. And so many of these, what I start with, I mean, it's aggressive, first of all, I'll tell you that, but that's for us to be, I think. It'll get, I have no illusions that these are all gonna be funded in the time frame or at all that we have, but we need to be advocates, and we have been and will continue to be. The first one that I start with is a funded project currently but I don't think, given the way things are currently with supply chain and costs and stuff, that we're gonna necessarily be able to take, or the $125,000 that we have, I hope we're able to do replacement of gutters and the roof at the Freight House, but in the event that we don't, and I'll know it by time we submit, that might get scratched off if we have favorable bids, but if not, I'm gonna have to go as far as that money will take us in 2023, and then redo the rest or complete the rest, and that's why that's at the top of the list,
We
because.
can't ask them to fund it through the rest of the projects.
Yeah, and that's also, it's a possibility, but it all is, I don't wanna hang my hat on that, so I have to have kind of a plan B in place, so that's why that's there. Hopefully, that won't necessarily be.
So just another question. Some of these might be in 24 and 25 in the current CIP, or you're saying
No.
we got nothing?
Well,
for
we
25?
received, what the two main projects that we submitted, and I want to put an asterisk by that, because there was also $800,000 Veterans Memorial Park. I mean, council sees this as Riverfront, as we should too. We didn't actually, I didn't submit that project, we supported it, but same thing, $1 million project at River Heritage Park. We're very much supportive of that. That wasn't one I authored
For the
on this
following
sheet.
year?
Well, that happened this.
Yeah, I'm
past-
talking, talking about as we look forward.
Right,
Were
so
some of these at all placed in 24, 25?
I would have to look, yes.
Yeah, that would be, when
Yes.
you give us our
Yes,
list.
some of them were, and what I did here, I should have placed both of the dates on there, what I'd recommend and where they currently sit, and I can
Okay.
update that.
So what you have on here, 24 and 25, this is.
It's what I'm
What
recommending.
you're recommending, okay.
Yeah, I mean preliminarily.
They like to know, I mean, if it was
you
there
have to-
last year, the staff, I don't know about the
Yeah.
council later, but they kind of like, well, that's, yeah, we said yes to that.
Okay, yeah,
Exactly.
You know, we're not gonna really revisit that.
right.
It does
Really.
help.
I
I have
know
found,
it
it
does.
helps a lot. And so, and also having, like, for some of these, I'll need some, estimates, and that gives me some time to pull some things together, because they like, especially these days, there's a lot more money to be spent this year that wouldn't have been in the past because of costs, costs and where they are situated, costs for supplies, and everything's up. And so some of these are not necessarily in an order that I've ranked. I've really paid more attention to dates and where they currently are placed. So most things that we start with are, if they didn't get funded in 23, they got booted to 24 probably. It's a good point that many of the 24s are in 24. Doesn't mean that they stay there, because that can all change.
So where's the FEMA project for the Union Station?
As far as an update, they
No,
have.
where is it in our share match in the?
Yes,
Is it
so
already funded?
It's already, yeah. So
Funded, we hope enough.
Yeah, so I haven't really
That helps.
included it. Yeah, I haven't included it on this sheet. I may, but see, then sometimes this sheet isn't what's submitted. I go into the portal and have to do this. So then there becomes this huge number of projects. So sometimes, like, if Zach does something, or in that case Clay submits a project, I don't want to be redundant. And many times we are, because I don't want to forget about a project, but I won't know until the report is run
But it's funded.
that it's funded. But it is funded, and just by way
Clay will be
of,
the one that says I don't have enough money.
yeah, that will be one of them, yeah, I think.
Okay.
But where that where that is currently, it's, it's taking an enormous amount of time, but I'm told from Clay that, they've asked for an archaeological study,
No.
FEMA. but we don't know the extent of it, and so we're following along. We're being told that it looks very promising still and all of that, but they're wanting some things that are adding to our costs for this without, anyway, I don't wanna say too much. I'm hopeful that we'll continue to, get that moving. It's the same thing where I have a call into the Channel Cat with MetroLink. That's a project that we have a local share. It was a grant through FTA, $1.2 million grant for $300,000 for us. My guess is that's gonna balloon up a little bit,
Well, you're gonna have to do an environmental where the curbs go.
MetroLink is on that, but I haven't heard where we're at with that. And it was supposed to open this year, and I get the pandemic and I'll get all of that stuff, but I'm just hopeful that when I asked both those questions, the Union Station and the Channel Cat now, I'm hopeful that next year we're gonna be able to see those. As it is, Union Station, it'll be under construction in best case scenario next construction season. Probably Channel Cat too, which means not until 2024 calendar year would it be ready for use. And all the while, it's safe, but it is aging, it's wood,
So can you give us maybe just a little, I'm looking at the Freight House restrooms, what's entailed in that
Yeah.
50,000?
So-
Not
Yep,
much.
no, absolutely. And so the scope on some of what I'm thinking on some of this is, like the upstairs, I've had this conversation, I think you brought it up here before, but the tenant in the diner, the restrooms they need some upgrades. And we're seeing more and more
You
calls.
put a little work on it, something
We've done
happened.
we've done some work, and we are trying to replace toilets it's taken like 3 years for the whole building, because I don't know how many, it might be 21 toilets or something like that, maybe more. And we're trying to replace a few out of our budget. But when there comes to be some other additions, for example, hand dryers are being requested in the shared the shared restrooms between the brewery and the pizzeria. Because I'll tell you, I wanna help out, but we don't necessarily have the budget always to do, those add up. It's like $3,000 because we gotta get power to a certain area. You guys don't wanna be in the weeds and all this, but to help you understand, it is, they clean them, the tenants are charged with cleaning them and supplying them. And that is a lot of money, the hand towels, and those costs have gone up. And so it has been it's always kind of been in the background, but it's been a renewed interest to say, hey, Steve, might we look at some shared scenario if you did this, and this,
So can we submit a project and take into consideration that I think they're doing a playground, right, with some money on the other end, that we can talk to the other staff and say, all right, let's be honest with you, you're doing toilets, I hope to God, in this playground that are substantial, that might be able to take the Main Street out of commission. We have nothing for LeClaire Park for small venues, and we are overburdening our tenants and can't get any more rent because of it.
Correct.
Because they have the public restrooms there. So can we come up with a design solution between what's in the Freight House and maybe somewhere else that we can have public restrooms in this section? They're all happy about farmers market and all these things, but we really,
You're right.
we need a solution.
Yep.
And I think over the next month, you work with staff and say, okay, here's the domain here on this side of Skybridge, here's the domain here in LeClaire Park and at Freight House.
Yeah, because we really don't have outside of Freight House.
We really
And it was not designed, or at least the tenants certainly shouldn't expect to accommodate everybody, like that. You're right.
No, we need serious public restrooms.
The Main Street ones there's something amiss there.
Well, that should go.
Something- Well,
I mean,
Yeah, I
not
agree.
about, the restroom, I think it has probably historical significance, but it would have to be brought up on a hill. I mean, again, isn't that our philosophy? You don't rebuild in the floodplain,
Right.
at least not at 15 feet. So,
Well, just to
me,
give
it's
you
that
an
they're good-
idea-
they gotta do
Especially
something.
toilets.
Red, White, and
Right.
Boom,
Yeah.
this is a good
Yeah.
example, because
Yeah.
Red, White, and Boom, we actually,
People look for-
we rented, not at our cost, but as part of the committee cost, the city's cost, I was in charge of securing about 18 porta potties, and, you know, placing them all around. Okay, so we didn't even open the Main Street, we put porta potties in front of those doors because last year when we made use of them, they were overwhelmed within seconds.
No, yeah, you can't do it.
Because, so it's, and then they're disgusting too, but I mean, that's a side issue. So you're right, and I will.
We
have the
can't do
conversation.
restrooms for that kind of event,
Right.
but, you know.
Well, no, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm saying though is
But
that
I mean,
it should
for an
still be able
event
to be
for
open.
like Quinlan Court, that's 100,
Yes.
or for an
Yes,
event like
exactly.
the movies that are 300
Yeah.
for 2 hours, or
Yeah, but
really
that's-
the farmer's market where people
Yes.
just overwhelm. We really have to have a solution. I think we should talk about it, and I do believe that in this budget should be more than 50,000 that takes the burden from those tenants. And I think it should be the lights and the, you know, high-end, blow your hands off is what I think should be
Yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah, right.
You know, because that's what most people, if they wanna, they're gonna dry their hands, they really expect it to be seen.
Well, and then you also
Yes.
don't
Right?
just have the
Well, and
additional
clean.
mess of the paper towels. I mean,
Yes.
in addition to, I mean, when
They
you've
can
got a
go
lot
get
of
a
people
napkin in the
coming and
restaurant.
going.
Well, I think what I hear you all saying, I mean, is right, and that is, if we do something newer or a little more robust, then we are partnering, that's our part through the CIP to do that with our tenants, that might take some of that pressure off of them.
And we just made
So-
the surfaces, I mean, really, the whole thing needs to be almost like.
Yeah, like the
it's a
countertop, so
restaurant.
that's really what
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, and you're right, that amount, when you're looking at all of them, isn't going to work. So this probably just became either a couple year, multi-year project, or, and or a sizable increase to this.
I just think we're gonna vote on it. You
Yeah.
could show it multi-year, maybe we can vote, but I'm thinking this is the time when the council has to step up and say, we wanted all this programming, we have it.
Yeah, yeah,
Now we have consequences
Yeah.
that we love,
that's true.
and it's probably a $250,000.
And there are some needs that can't wait, and bathroom needs tend to be those. I mean, I think, yeah, we want to have a good,
And you have them all
It goes
both
right
ends,
with
right?
that discussion
You have them
of
between.
cleanup, like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna invite people somewhere, you gotta be ready to clean,
Yes.
you know.
And can you add bathrooms?
Right. Well, it definitely, there has to be some thought between River Heritage Park, I mean, there's nothing there.
Well, no,
The
I'm talking
passengers-
just in the freight house. You have them
Right.
right there between
Well,
the
but
two
that whole
vendors.
expands,
And
right.
you have that down here, but you have the outdoor that you could change into maybe a major public
Well, you
area.
certainly have,
So the one that's between them starts becoming people who use the porch and the facility.
yeah, like we built, when the band shell addition was done, there's additional ones there, but they would be fast, I mean, it can't accommodate a big event, or any sizable event, it's for some of the smaller concerts, fine, but you're right. All of those things together, though, if we add, you know, restrooms, I mean, we just have, we have to. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of, we have to do that. So there have been some discussions, there's even been some discussions about these self-cleaning ones, which are very expensive,
Heard that.
but there have been some discussions, so we'll see.
That still doesn't help.
It doesn't-
The building and the.
No, I mean, we still have some thoughts, you know, there's a lot, I mean, even on a heavy day, all that the market has is like the 2 porta pots and then all the building. And the market is a tenant of building, so I mean, they have quite a few stalls themselves in one portion, but they all get a workout.
Oh, yeah, it looks
They
as
all-
bad as the middle one. I
Yes.
mean, it's horrendous at the
Yes.
end of Farmers
I
Market.
did some things through our budget last year where we put some lights in there, like, I don't go in the women's bathroom, but the women's bathroom of the farmer's market was so dark, I can't believe it had, I mean, it was scary, like, it was
Yeah.
just scary, like, it's already sort of a brick facade, and it's, like, the last stall, I'm like, I can't even see what I'm doing, like, I wouldn't know what, you know, so we changed lights, and it's now like you're, you know,
I
you got
think we should tell them
spotlight
this
on
would
you.
improve our ability to get more rent from the building too.
Yeah, well, it would certainly, it's used against us when we go to try to,
And
so.
it's,
Fairly
I think
so.
it's successful.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, so I think we should like maybe dress that one up.
I will definitely asterisk that and work on that. I would say that, the bus turnaround, River Heritage Park, let me quickly talk about that project. That's one that Zach would probably author or at least submit, or they would through Public Works but I wanted you all to know what's being talked about, and that is, there, for the boats and our, the passenger boats, Viking and American Cruise Lines, without sort of taking up too much additional space in River Heritage Park, which there's not much to take up. Nobody wants to add a bunch of parking to a space that's limited anyway, so let me preface it by saying that. At the same time, and we're lucky that there's only one date this year where there's gonna be both two boats at the same time, October 11th. I think it's a day I should be sick, by the way. No, I'm kidding. It's gonna be a very fun day. It'll be fine. But we'll have 10, 12 buses.
The hammerhead doesn't work?
Well, it's not so much the hammerhead in this case. It's the space to try to place all those buses in there, and you can't. Like I said from day one, that wasn't a plausible goal anyway. When we negotiated with these two companies, they said 4 buses travel with them, and that was enough. And suddenly, Viking is interested in like 8. Is what that's a big deal. Like I can't necessarily accommodate that. So and then you have people that we want to come down and be there and take pictures of, we want the public, it's their park, right? But then there gets to be some logistical challenges. And so it's all handled through logistics, except this, it's not really a turnaround, that's what it's being called, but it's more just an expanded area for pickup without upending, but anytime you start digging, it's a couple $100,000.
So is this gonna dig up what we just did?
No, it's downstream, well, not just did, but like had done previously.
Yeah.
It's to add to it, it's not to like, so it
you're
might
just
disrupt
between
it,
the
it's to
gazebo
make it
and the
bigger.
bridge.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
from the entry point
Right.
downstream and not even that full array. But one of the issues is that's right where the rec trail comes through, so it's gonna have to be, moved, because, might have to be routed up a little bit or that's what I'm getting at. It's gonna take some space, but everyone's cognizant of it not taking too much space. It's one of those things where people get all excited during the 3 months of Little League in all of our parks that have Little League, because there's not enough parking for, 3 people, 3 cars per child. But then it goes away, right, because everyone's leaving from work, but all of a sudden all the neighborhoods get upset, and I remember this vividly. Everyone gets upset with Little League season, and it lasts 2.5 months, 3 months, it's over, and no one would like those parks to be full of asphalt.
Right.
That's not what we want either, yes.
Kelly, could we move item 7A up now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make sure the vote's recorded before I go.
Okay, oh, yes, I'm sorry, we should,
Ah.
and we actually talked about doing
We did
the
talk
election of
about
officers
it.
earlier,
I know,
then I
sorry
forgot
about
about
that.
it. So, yeah,
Thanks,
actually,
Bill.
so, I don't know, there's not a.
Well, it's really.
Do we
Well,
need
I'll
a
just
motion
say,
and all this good stuff?
what we normally have been doing is a couple, it's not just, it's done every year, election of officers for a year. We currently have the position of vice chair still vacant from when Neil relocated. The existing existing officers are willing to continue on in their respective positions. I haven't reached out to you about making sure you're fine in as secretary or what you'd like there, but Gwendolyn's even well aware of how, like, after the next year that she's been an officer and, I would hope would consider
Going
being
up the
chair.
ladder.
Even if not from vice chair, what I'm trying to suggest, it doesn't have to necessarily go from that. It's as all part of the officers, if you're part of that, anyone is able to take over is what I'm getting at. At some point, we're still down one person, but at some point, if there's interest among the balance of the group, we should make sure that we're filling all three so that then we do have that continuity that is so needed after maybe the next couple years, but we need to take some time to make sure that person who would be new to an officer position is ready.
And which ward was Neil with?
I'm sorry,
Which ward was Neil with?
He was downtown.
I think he was fifth.
Tim Kelly?
Well, I mean, it was,
Yeah,
I think it was Matt Dorman.
It was Matt Dorman, yes,
Yeah.
the fifth.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, but currently, for purposes of tonight, you need a motion.
For the chair and the secretary?
Yeah, and if we don't, yeah,
Do we need a vice, we do need a vice.
Ultimately, we should.
ultimately, at least our bylaws specify. Do we need to fill it tonight? No, but I would suggest sometime maybe in this year, we should think about trying to do
Yeah.
that. Otherwise, we may get into a situation like next year, you will go off, you'll move up, and then
Right, we
where's?
need another person coming
Right,
on.
we need to kind
Sure.
of keep
I
that.
guess my question is, maybe it's kind of rude, but Gwendolyn would, I mean, if we found a third person, you want to stay as secretary, you don't want to go to vice chair? You're staying there now because we gotta have a secretary to sign stuff.
Yeah, I have no problem going to vice chair if we
Yeah.
have somebody.
So
else
maybe
on
So
that's
we
what-
should look for somebody to be secretary and then, yeah.
Move up, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I didn't want to present.
That might
for
be
you,
our
so.
How dare
intention,
you.
so but right now, we're just gonna play hold.
So, yeah.
Well, that's fine. So then we would just need a motion to that end, and then we would have a vacancy to the secretary position.
Well, you have to have a secretary now to sign, I don't think that would
Well,
be a good
I
idea.
mean, technically, yes, but in the absence of a secretary, I usually would have the vice chair
Do you?
sign, or the chair.
Usually it's the chair.
Chair or vice chair could. I mean, I don't know if everyone knows this, but like after we do the minutes, the officers, both of them, but all three of them in the future, right, would get the chance to review it before you all approve it. So that's the main function, for that particular position.
So do you want a motion for the chair and the vice chair with the understanding that we will, work to fill the secretary position?
I think just that, exactly like that, yeah.
Okay, I'll move that.
Okay.
Second it.
Any discussion? Volunteers to be secretary? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill, thanks for reminding us.
Are you okay with that? Okay, I will. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yep.
Best to your family.
Okay, so, Steve, on the CIP list, maybe, are there any that people would like a little bit more color on, that maybe if there's something that you looked at and you
Yeah.
said, what would that be?
Well, I do want to, next meeting, I'm gonna have Chad Dyson with Parks, go over the master, he's out of town right now, but the master plan, the Parks master plan, and hone in more on the riverfront
That's
elements.
always-
Because I don't know that we need all of the breadth of it.
We don't have time probably
We
for the
don't,
full.
and let's just
parts,
focus, right?
yes.
And so, but the Credit Island piece here is only from something that he and I have had a very preliminary conversation that we're gonna meet next week about. I can't even give you the meat to the bone here that you see is $500,000 Credit Island enhancements. He would like to submit something sizable for Credit Island. He's getting
And
a
is
lot of
that
pressure.
building upon what he came and did a presentation on for
I,
us?
I would say that presentation was only for an existing budgeted, play area, so this is not
Because
related to
Put it
that.
in the full.
This is much bigger than that, and as an
This is the
aside.
Causeway Bridge.
No, that's
No,
not the box.
this isn't, but it should be a segue to it. He's talking more
That's down
separate.
there too.
Yeah, I have that listed because those are
Oh,
not,
parking.
those are partners. Those are partners, but I need to have that
That's a
conversation.
big dollar amount. I thought we were gonna study the sustainability of it to figure out what the enhancements were.
And that might be where
You
that
could break
is.
this apart.
Maybe that's in there.
Exactly. I'm just doing a placeholder.
So my thought is, maybe you could get with a core and say, we'll be putting this together, what do you anticipate here in this kind of approach where there might be some federal funds?
That's
that
right.
we could mention.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Mark Cornish, who has been my contact with the Corps, I nudged him a couple months ago to see, he had a session with us, remember, we had that whole multiple sessions. And I kind of remind, hey, where are we, you know, like, is the Corps still interested in being a partner, like, that sort of thing. And he responded that yes, and that taking the environmental angle, which is what many of us have been talking about from the start, but these things take time, I get it. What is like a winner, like, yeah, I know. I mean, I was just like, oh, yeah, sure, yeah, you know, I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm like, no, this is my life. So, but anyway, I'm hopeful, that the Corps, they need to be a major partner in this.
Well,
to
whatever
go
they
anywhere.
need us to talk about,
Exactly.
to recognize their major partner in this,
It's what I
we're
said.
happy to do.
Exactly.
And they funded the Blackhawk study somewhere already, right?
I think so, I can double check that.
Yeah,
I
so
think
that
it made
needs
it
to-
in, because it was under a
Because it's
different
all
area.
those flood things.
Yeah.
That, most of that's, we're never gonna see in our lifetime.
That affects the
This- yeah.
riverfront, but it
Yes,
wasn't,
that needs to-
it
that
was
needs to
submitted
be-
differently, so I need to double check.
No, yeah, I saw that was
It
it
was
was
in
a
there.
carved out project. Which
And
I would
also,
love.
I think I've mentioned this, but just for the sake of, you know, doing so, part of that Credit Island, or some near future project, has got to take into account, I think, the boat launch question, and I'm ready to write a grant. I mean, we got good money from Marquette Street replacement down here, and we are getting very close to our useful life of the Concord Busey landing, it's called. It's in the slough off Concord, but one
It's in
idea,
bad shape.
it's in terrible shape.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed every
Yeah.
year, you know. And then we took out on the channel side, on the upstream side of Credit Island a few years ago, the launch on Credit
Right.
Island. But that's mainly because we were catching a terrific amount of debris, and no one could, you know, here we are a city, but no one was willing and able safely at some points to almost daily
Yeah.
bring those huge
Right.
trunks and whatnot that float down. They were all getting caught. And so it was not safe. We get calls every day, you know, what are we doing? So I just didn't, the next season, place those boat ramps in, and that's been before the major flood of 2019. It's been a few years. But my idea, or our idea, I think should be related to connecting those two into one really nice new one off Credit Island on the slough side. You know, so like
Right.
we're marrying two ideas. Now sometimes the slough you can walk across, and sometimes it's pretty full. But to have a kayak launch and new long-lasting boat launch that's nice, covered, you know, some picnic benches or some benches, and then the access to it would, you know, we have Marquette that you can boat all night long, fine, and we encourage that. But not every single place needs to have that kind of access. And so at the Credit Island one with the door, you know, the gates lock at a certain time, you know, after sunset or whatever. Anyway, would be some security associated with it as well. So that falls into, I feel like that when Chad mentioned something to me, I mentioned that to him, you know, because we need to look at sustainability. If trees aren't able to be planted because there's no viable soil, we need to figure out that. But it's almost, I feel like, hand in hand with other things, because no one's gonna allow that to take place. Right, there's too much pressure out there right now, or growing pressure. I don't think we wanna leverage, not lose.
Right.
We wanna do both and, you know.
Is there state funding for that too?
For which part?
The boat launch, no?
Yes.
Yes, that's
Yes,
what I thought.
we matched, it was a 75 to 25,
Yeah.
75 state grant, for Marquette. I feel
Yeah.
like
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
do
Oh,
that
no,
again. I'm
and that's
just
still
waiting.
happening, so I
Yeah.
think that's possible.
Yeah, and we've got a kayak launch that's underused because it gets in the way at Marquette
Yeah.
to the serious boaters, fishermen, and then sometimes the slough is not deep enough, ironically, to use it, even a kayak. I mean, sometimes just anyway, so we've got like one in storage that we just need to, it was a
Put it
grant funded thing, we need to
Mhm.
use it, so, and there would be people who would, not just during Floatzilla. I mean, there's a lot of people who
Yeah.
want to partake, but we do have a number of Illinois folks that come, I mean, but I see it as a positive, come on over, gas up while you're here, I mean, spread some sales tax, we're good. So, but anyway.
Are there any other major ones that we should highlight, or are there any that people, would like a little more information on?
I'm unsure on the Freight House District signage.
Yep, that was what I'm hoping you ask about. So it's not developed fully beyond a concept, but the concept is the following. Somewhere around, there's always tenants are always wanting some more signage, because the front side, the north side of the building is tough. In fact, there's even idea surfaced as recently as yesterday, like down in the Freight House, maybe even in the brewery, to make a large window where some of those murals, like not all of them, but like a couple of them, because some of those are actual kitchens, so that doesn't work. But in the places where you could actually bring some, not so much light, it faces north, but just recognition that there's something inside that building, because sometimes it seems like there's not unless you turn and go down. Anyway, the idea of signage always comes up. How do we do this? There's not really a lot of right-of-way out front. The train's kind of in the way, looked at trying to put signage on the train. That there's problems with that cost-wise. Maybe even look at on the corner of the building of Ripley and River Drive. It's 2 stories where the diner is. Try to do some signage, for the different tenants. But this district signage is something along these lines. On Ripley, imagine one of those, you'd see them in many towns and whatever, but where there's almost like it could be 2 towers, or it could be one of these arch kind of things with signage that would, everyone knows where the Freight House is, it seems, and so you're gonna have Main Street landing up a bit. When you describe about different things happening, everything from the brewery to the farmer's market, you mentioned the Freight House, people know, right? Generally the area, the neighborhood. And so you could affix signage, make that, sort of market that as such, Freight House District, as that area. And then you could end up using that also in a smaller way for some of the neighborhood residents, some of the businesses or whatever that signage could be affixed to that as well. There's pros and cons to all of these ideas. That's why it's not totally fleshed out, because that's kind of, a lot of people go in any event that goes into Leclerc Park, Ripley Street and Harrison, but Ripley Street's the main entrance. So a lot of people would see it and feel it and whatever, but you may not see it as much as you want to because the buildings are in the way from River Drive. So that's the con to it, I think, for a lot of money. And so I don't know, but I do like the idea of branding with or without signage, branding the area, more concretely in that neighborhood, that sub-neighborhood, if you will, the Freight House District. I just think that's a
what
winner.
most people think of it. We
They
just
do.
need to add one word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't disagree. And in fact, the sign that's on top of the diner says Freight House Marketplace. And I've always kind of wished that the farmer's market, I'll keep pushing this, but that the inside vendors who are not really farmer's market vendors per se, like as we
They
think
could be
of
Freight House
outside,
vendors.
that they would be rebranding themselves into a city or urban market kind of retail boutique kind of thing, because it's a disconnect, and there's a rub that we don't need to discuss today, but between sort of the indoor and outdoor vendors, some of them, because of that. And if people come down to the Freight House and some don't even realize that there's an indoor year-round market, well, what does that look like? Who's in there? And anyway, so. Any other ones? I'm not sure. I mean, take a look and.
Parks would be submitting, bike path repair, not repair, but
Yep, they do
upgrades
that,
and stuff
yep.
like that, so they'll coordinate.
Yep.
kind of need that.
Yes, they've done some this year. I don't know if you've noticed that there's been a few, generally from about River Heritage Park to up to Bound. Not that whole stretch, but throughout that stretch, there's been several weeks of work along the rec trail. So, I mean, it's a constant
Yeah,
and in many different areas, but yeah, yep.
Okay.
So what I would just ask, and I will send this maybe out so that it catches those that were not able to join us tonight, just to kind of
right up.
think, I'll keep on the agenda, if there's no discussion next time, but I'd just rather you all be more.
Well, I would like you to send it out so that we can
Yep.
rank them and have that
Yeah, do
before
you
the
want-
next meeting, sort of, and then we can say, okay, these are kind of the ones that currently are floating to the top.
So just sort of make
And we
it,
could, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to, it's not written in stone, but
Right.
it gives us, I think, a good discussion
okay,
point.
that's how I'll do it then.
Yeah,
I
and then
would
also the people that aren't here, they can,
Question, I mean, I
and
can
they
have
can
those
also
conversations.
put their ranking, and that'll be then a good opportunity. We'll flesh it out a little more next time.
That's fine. If there's any additions, we'll handle that accordingly. I don't look for there to be, but if there are, that's fine.
Next is your report. Steve, I don't know if you've got.
Yeah, there's just a couple things here.
Hey, before we do that, could we put like purchase of private land and just,
On the,
there's several parcels, yada, 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 along the riverfront that.
On our
you know,
CIP list, you mean?
Yeah, and then kind of put a number in there. It would be nice to have some money to pick up things when they become available. And just starting with a project would be
Mhm.
a smart idea.
I like to.
'Cause then they would
place projects in there, like you said earlier, because even if there's not a year assigned to it initially,
Mhm.
it is a constant reminder and
Well-
it reflects our vision,
Right.
or seeks to support it.
Yeah, there are several pieces that we could pick up. We could do something, at that turn before you get to Credit Island if we didn't, what's his name, Blackwell didn't have that
Blackwell.
property. But we wouldn't need to name it, we just need to, talk about, there are 7 to 10 parcels. And then along Concord, right?
Yeah.
That's our other interest. I mean, that's the river, kind of the River West plan, what,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Got it.
to me, that would be a good project. Okay, I'm done.
Nope, don't be done. The Viking is still planning to visit Davenport, but it kind of has had a second announced delay. And so it is now, the target is Tuesday, August 30th for the initial portage, initial docking. So I think with that one, if that holds to be the case, there would be 6 Viking stops this season. They down from, I think, 9 or 10 originally, but they're moving things along, and we had a meeting today with with Visit Quad Cities folks and PD, and to handle the logistical challenge of that initial stop. We want to play it up. We want to have a big media event and music and a nice welcoming and all of that stuff for them. And then also, we talked about on October 11th, when both boats are here, a similar logistical challenge. We're going to need, same kinds of things with PD. We can't close River Drive, we're not trying to, but we need to be ready for, PD's going to have to help with that in that area. We need to seek some close by parking, we need to look at how we stack buses, all of that stuff. And so we're working on that, but I wanted you all to know that the initial visit, American continues weekly to be here, and will continue through, I think, November 7th. Viking they assure us they'll be here, but it's now the 30th of August. So another cool thing that happened, I sent this note to you all, but Living Lands and Waters did a Recycle Like a Rock Star, and we had approved to do it in June. It just happened this past weekend, and they are there for the next few days, probably through the week, because they've had a chance. They've had a chance to continue their efforts, basically, is the best way to put it. And they're very happy that we have accommodated. It's no sweat off our backs, really. They're at Oneida Landing
How long are they
Both-
gonna be at Oneida?
I think through Sunday.
Through Sunday?
Through Sunday, and
Makes
they're not
sense.
really actively doing the
It's
same
garbage.
event that they did. They actually had it really cool. They used that whole parking lot, which we had given them permission to do, and had it all. So a lot of it has been empty now. I have some before and after pictures, and they had, that barge was piled high, and now it's like maybe a third of what it had been, because they're offloading it. They've got some local, like Republic,
Yeah.
is helping with that, whether it's metal and dot. So they
Great.
just need that more time. They called it helps them then prepare for their winter, their fall program, basically. I will say, I have a secondary interest in this that I've stated to them, and that is that barge party we used to host it, and it's pretty cool, and it is in Rock Island. I'm not trying to take it away at all, but I do think in this bi-state area that every other year seems appropriate, and I've stated that with them. That I make no bones that you could have this and so much more. I said, so because we have nice riverfront too, and that's programming, and
Yeah.
so anyway, we don't have anything concrete yet, but that's where I'm also heading with it. So we had, I'll start with this. Last Thursday was one of our best Thursday night concerts. It was the Tail Fins at Quinlan Court, and I think we easily surpassed 225, maybe even honed in on 250. I'm not sure. Everyone, it was great to see so many people dancing, and great time. They've not all been like that, and I'll probably end up, not sure yet, but recommending next year to scale back. Maybe instead of every Thursday, which is an easy marketing thing, but I may be recommending, I'm toying with the idea about doing like a second and fourth. I gotta think of a creative way to convey that, because that can get very complex, right? I mean,
Confusing if you're
scheduling,
expecting-
but, right, and so if we can come up with a neat, nuanced way of doing that, but the point is that I think if we scale back, it might give us an opportunity to explore a couple other programming things that we wanna do too. So it's not out of lack of success. I've been pretty pleased. There have been some nights that it's been sparse, but we've definitely adhered to the diverse genre commitment, and that is in play too. So I'm starting to look at 2023 already. So anyway. Let's see, Hello Lamppost, we finally, this was a month ago, we launched it. We're gonna have, I knew this, but we're gonna have a lot of work to get people to, utilize it. Because it's just, we have these, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we have these banners that are placed in different areas, but I need to get up on stage at some of these events and make reference to it, have a sign there, not demonstrate it and bore people, but make reference of it, because here's the thing, it's not just a great way to convey the programming schedule, it's also a great feedback mechanism, and we want to be about that, right? We represent this community, the Riverfront aspirations, and we want to solicit or elicit, feedback on all
Steve,
levels.
have you engaged the media
Yeah,
at all to get
nobody's really
feedback?
grabbed a hold of it. We have to work harder on it.
Okay.
They've just not. I mean,
Yeah.
I love the banners. We put it out there internally on the website. It just isn't, I think we have to do some hand holding.
Yeah, I think, it seems like we ought to be able to get a reporter down there to, okay, you do it now, kind of thing, and
I-
that could be an
I-
interactive story that,
We launched right at the end of like June, so then I was kind of hoping that Red, White, and Boom, and we did see some actually of that because of just the number of people around, but
yeah.
we need to do a little bit
We need
more.
a Saturday,
Started.
Sunday reporter who can't.
Yeah.
That
Needs
anything
to,
out.
and be reminded that there's this opportunity,
Yeah.
because the news cycle, like,
Right.
once city sends something out, which we've done, it's forgotten about by Monday, kind of
Yeah.
thing, so. I will make mention, maybe you wanna say something about, the ad hoc group that met initially last week?
Yeah, we kind of rekindled the group that we did have before with some of the city council folks, some of the commission folks, and then parks, to try and really we need to nail down what are the areas of responsibility and how do we define the amount that it costs to maintain these areas that are sort of like, you know, a little tricky. Part of it's an overlap between what's parks, what's commission. And so we started just by saying, okay, if we can first just get our arms around what is the extent of the area that parks takes care of along the 9 miles of Riverfront. And then if they could do everything they're supposed to be doing, what would that commitment be? How much would that cost to actually have done? So we can start by saying, this is what it would take if we were doing it on the, 7-day cycle that ideally we should be doing it on. And this is where the funding is right now. So here's the gap. Now how do we attack the gap? And so I think that it went very well. I thought better than we thought it might as an initial meeting. I thought we had great feedback from Parks. I was really happy with how engaged that conversation was. And so we're going to be getting back together. Is it August 10th?
10th, yep.
Yeah, for a subsequent meeting, and Dee was there and Gwendolyn was there.
Ultimately, the goal, I think, if we want to look at an outcome, is to have the discussion to be, share information, but also for it to translate into some sort of monetary request. I don't think, it's what it comes down to. There's no silver bullet, but honestly, I saw the next day, I saw Alderman Dunn, and he's just like, I said, how do you think it went? And he said, great, but it's really, it comes down to money,
But we say that all the time, and the thing
Right.
that I think is the stumbling block is, it's money, okay, but how much?
How much?
We never stop
Well, I
and
was
say,
surprised to
okay,
learn,
how much?
and this isn't, I'm not being negative, but I was really surprised as a long-term staff member with another one, that Betsy, who was standing in for Chad, didn't know that our 52.5, like she didn't feel it in her budget, I should say. I think she knew about it.
She's not going to.
Well, but it's.
She probably doesn't know it exists.
Yeah, maybe on paper, it comes up a lot. But now, with that reaction, I understand a little bit about some of my challenges. Because then, who is Steve to say, to ask for some of these things?
Yeah.
So, but it shouldn't be like that, like it can't be. Like
Yeah.
we've had discussions and meetings before. So it's not to denigrate, I'm just saying it's informative
Yeah.
sometimes. And then especially with a larger group, more than just even a one-on-one to have those discussions, because we can finally maybe get to the bottom of it, So,
Yeah, and I think that was the
hopeful.
thing. It felt like it was a problem-solving conversation, not nobody feeling like it was a finger-pointing conversation. So you could actually feel like you were going to
We
accomplish
tried to
something.
set that tone.
Yeah,
early.
we're, like,
I
the
mean-
goal here is for all of us to
Well,
solve
it really
solve
is.
the
I'm
problem.
not interested.
I think, the thing that, this is my liberal side, I'm sorry, but when, she said we pay $12 an hour.
And that's a raise, they were at 10
Yeah.
in May.
Just in
That's a raise this year of $2. Now let me finish. They're a part-time, they're a 6-month employee. They start April 1.
Without benefits.
They end April 30th, but they can't work 1 hour over 1060 or they have IPER benefits.
Right.
Of which she was a little chagrined about, but it was like, that's because you have more than a part-time person when you start working them like that. I mean, 10 hours one day, 4 hours the next day, and by now it's, August and it's 1060, I'm out of money. And what's really, the understanding is no one understands the real world workflow, nor have they been ever, even when I was there, willing to fund it. And they're not going, that group of people who are retirees, that they're not going to replace them at $12. We have 2 pools open every other day, that one and that one, because they will not
Correct.
increase their money to 15.
Right, you just
Yep.
had,
You
yeah.
can't
And
do
there's too
that
much
now.
competition.
There's too much competition
for
for,
it, that people aren't
the
going to do that. And they
number
found that
of
there's
people,
open
yeah.
jobs year-round for
Yes.
city, different positions, and
Everywhere.
these are among them.
yeah.
And so when we have like a custodian working on a Sunday, I get crazy, because, very honestly, I get crazy because the busiest days of parks throughout the park system would be the weekends, right? we should be ready for that. It shouldn't be a surprise. We should be not more than ready, we should be welcoming, we should be programming, we should be where they are, like, that's how I look at it,
Yeah.
and then clean up.
Yeah, part
You
of
know?
me says that maybe some of these jobs really, because parks can't put it to another half
Right.
job,
Put two.
that maybe that's not where it belongs.
Right.
Is there some other vehicle that allows this to happen?
Right,
And
so,
which jobs are those?
that's right, and I hope
Right.
that's where
But we
we,
really need to know
have that
all of-
discussion.
She's
But we
gonna lay out
have
all
to first
that.
define
I
what
agree.
is, what's
What do
the
you
work?
do?
Yeah.
What's the
How
word?
many times do you come here?
Yeah.
Because the alternative really becomes, either garbage everywhere. I mean, I'm honing in on that, but I really think about programming and then, sort of cleanup as hand in hand, but ends up being, that sort of function. The alternative, then, you're not gonna do it? Like, I mean, that's a choice. I would love that to be aired out proactively than reactively, because you can't be surprised when people show up to something.
Yeah.
You gotta be ready for it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and I don't wanna be in a place that is then pulling back on not only their programming or their offerings, but then also what I think are just standard finishes. They're not even, I won't even use the word high-end finishes. I mean, talking about landscaping and, we do it hodgepodge okay, but it's because there's such stress or pressure on the horticultural folks, which we have fewer and fewer of. So it might look good around Dillon Fountain, but the timing of it doesn't work for me. Like the Channel Cat opens in May, right around Memorial Day every year, Memorial Day through essentially Labor Day. It was just like 2 weeks ago that the landscaping mound next to it got addressed. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My frustration, I think it would be yours too, is that we're not ready when we need to be ready. And I get the reality, I get the pressures that you just talked about. How do we fix that? How do we
Yeah. Well,
change
that's-
that? That's what I
that's-
wanna be part of.
As a buyer, so to speak, of the thing, you also, I think, need to sit down and basically say, here are the different areas.
That's right.
And while we have never owned the Dillon Fountain, it is one of those areas that easily might not be done by board.
Right.
It might be done
And
by
we'd
the
be the
company
last to know.
that provides all the petunias
Yes.
for the downtown.
Yeah.
Well, I
and
worried
think,
this
you
year
know-
because it didn't look real good right away.
Well,
Like
and
everything
that-
took a while to
Yeah.
drum up this
That
year.
goes back to,
Very cool.
we need to get our arms around, what is the extent of the
Yes.
work?
Yep.
Once we know that.
Then we can
then
prioritize.
start to say, okay, well, this work isn't happening, so, yeah, we have to figure out how to do
That's
that, so. So anyway, I thought it was good, and Steve, thanks for working to make sure we get that.
Well, we got a lot of work to do on it, but I feel like it's worth it.
Yeah. Do you have anything else?
I don't.
I don't think we have any public business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.
It's usually the guys that adjourn.